Why did Cormac McCarthy become a writer? And today we're going to hear from Cormac McCarthy himself about this, and his answer is not what you expect. And my name is Ian, and on Right Conscious, we cover everything related to Cormac McCarthy. If you look at my Cormac McCarthy playlist down below, we already have 154 videos on it, and it's growing daily. And so if you want to dive deeper into the works of Cormac McCarthy and a ton of other great authors and books, please subscribe to the channel and let us now hear from Cormac. In college, McCarthy studied physics and engineering, passions that remain just as strong today. It's interesting to know how the world works, he says. People ask me, why are you interested in physics? But why would you not be? To me, the most curious things of all is in curiosity. I just don't get it. There was just one problem with his course of study. I was good at it, but I wasn't that good, he says. I didn't want to do anything unless I could be the best at it. That's my own personal extravagant ego. So this is a wild statement, everybody, and really adds to Cormac McCarthy scholarship and our interpretation of him on this channel, because McCarthy was getting an engineering and physics degree. And when you look at his time at the Santa Fe Institute and at Stella Maris and the Passenger and the Kekule problem and that type of stuff, it's obvious that he's really into science. And you're like, why didn't he pursue that and do writing on the side? But he really touches on one of the most important aspects of life, which is you do have a purpose. You really are wired to do something great, even if you are like the weirdest, incompetent person out there. And maybe it isn't a career that's going to pay well. Like, I don't know. I've told this story before, but I had a friend in high school who was the best friend anyone could ever have. He was the most warm, authentic person. And he got good grades, but in high school he dropped out. And it was shocking, like rocked everyone's world. And everyone was like, bro, why did you drop out? And his response was so mind-blowing that like it is maybe why I'm here today. He said, this stuff isn't useful to me. I'm just going to make friends with people who are going to help me, and I'll never have to do anything. And my brain couldn't handle it. But a couple years down the road, after years of socializing and hanging out, I grew up in Las Vegas. He was hanging out in Summerlin, which is the rich area of town. He started becoming friends with rich people. And at some point, he became best friends with someone who was an entrepreneur. Eventually, that guy makes it, and he is now a personal assistant making six figures a year working for that guy. But he works at home from his computer 5 to 10 hours a week. But he's still best friends with his boss. But he was really smart. But if we pushed him to, go into the STEM field or something, he would be unhappy and he wouldn't be doing as good as he is now. He's a great father. He's a super cool guy. And the big problem with education right now and with the decline of the humanities is that everything is mapped out for us. Literally, the roads, our life, like what you have to do. If you do this, this, and that, you'll get this salary. And it's embarrassing. Because life isn't about just solving problems. And that's what the STEM fields have created. That's what this competitive, ambitious mentality has done, is everything is a problem to be solved. But in the humanities, it's about experiencing and feeling. And even at the deeper levels of science, if you're really into science, the most creative people in the world, some of the most creative people in the world are the people working on quantum physics or like the super meta layers of science and math. But they've transcended like that level of just easy problem solving, which we're somewhat trained to do. And so when Cormac says this, I don't think it's because of his extravagant ego. I think it's because of his intelligence, because I would say that you are an idiot if you are doing something and are doubling down and having a family and a mortgage and you're in a job that you hate. Over 90% of Americans and probably people all across the world would rather be doing something different if they could. And if you hate your job and you want to kill some time, I have a Cormac McCarthy course and a Cormac McCarthy book club that you can be a part of. The Cormac McCarthy course already has 30 hours of content. So if you waste 3 to 4 hours a day listening to stuff at work, you have about 10 work days of content. Plus I have a David Foster Wallace course and a bunch of other stuff on there. And if you want to join, the link is down in the description below. I also host daily office hours, writing sprints. Too much to talk about here. But if you are broke or you just don't like giving money to creators like me, I understand. You watching is enough. But I also have a free document that details 144 of Cormac's favorite books and authors available. Once again, down in the description below, click on that link and you can infinitely expand your reading list at once. And at some point, you sold out either on something that you are really good at and maybe it doesn't pay well, who knows what it is, or you never took the time to actually discover that. Because later on down the road, you can have secondary interests. Like Cormac, he later on got to hang out with Nobel Prize winning physicists and do all these things and work at the and write at the Santa Fe Institute. But if Cormac McCarthy continued on with his engineering and physics career, we would not have Blood Meridian or any good books. Even if he tried writing, we would have nothing of merit from him because it's really hard to balance those things. And he would never have met Nobel Prize winning physicists. Never would have been a part of any of that. In the long run, he was better at math and physics than he ever could have been. And so I hate to do this, but a lot of writers, and I'll talk about myself here. For a while, I idolized David Foster Wallace, Cormac McCarthy, Frank Herbert, any of these guys behind me. And I'm like, dude, I'm a fiction author. I love that. But at some point, I realized, just through meeting other people and writing, I was like, I'm good at this. I could get published. I can get on a bookshelf one day. Like, I can do this. I have a massive amount of will. I don't care about being alone. Like, you guys see me on here daily. Like, I can be consistent. But I realized that I couldn't be the best. I would maybe never reach these guys' level or like make the splash that I wanted. But instead, what was interesting in terms of writing is that I pivoted to something much less extravagant. I know that if I do well, I will go down, I'm hoping, but my ego is telling me this every single night in my head, that I can be the greatest desert poet ever. And there haven't been too many. Let me just tell you, the competition isn't too fierce. But I am going to leave such a body of work behind in that field that everyone else is going to have to compete. I shouldn't say compete. They're going to have to dedicate their life to writing about the desert for decades to be able to even, be in the same conversation as me when people talk about desert poets. Because I realized, I was like, you know what? My favorite thing to do is just walk out into the desert, whether it's cold and windy or just 110 degrees, and get put into a trance. Sit out there for a couple hours, get put into a trance, write a poem, and come home. That is probably my favorite thing in the world. I specifically live a 1-mile walk from a desert that goes on for 100 miles without any fences or contact, because I was like, I want to live somewhere where I can just do this every single day, no matter what. So I uprooted my life in Las Vegas and moved to a town outside of Tucson to be able to make that happen. And I've made massive sacrifices, for this, like Cormac McCarthy was doing. And so when you find this, it's not going to be easy most of the time. And depending on your answer, your path forward with that and embodying that may not be easy. It may not be profitable. And, and so this creates a lot of complications because once again, we've been hardwired, we've been given scarcity in our hearts. And that's what we're transitioning to on this channel right now. There are going to be videos where I'm going to be helping you guys embody and step into this. Because most likely, like I'm the desert poet, you have a niche talent in writing or literary analysis or teaching or whatever you are doing. And you need to find that. Because if you are here right now, you are probably interested in one of three things: reading, speaking, or writing. Probably two of those. And you feel like that is your calling. But the world has changed, and the same opportunities and using the same framework as back in the day where you're just going to send yourself, you're going to get a PhD, or you're just going to send your stuff out to publishers, that is outdated. Publishing on Kindle, that's outdated. And what's crazy is that Cormac took the time to be able to find this, to understand this. He was talented with reading and writing his entire life. He was writing novels as a young boy. He was reading 10 books a week in high school, and then again in the Air Force, then again in a university. That is an obvious talent. He had a photographic memory. And so Cormac really did step into, I'm going to be the best at the whole game. I'm going to be the king of literary fiction. I'm going to be called the greatest living author. Like, that's some OG stuff. And like I said, all of us, at the start want to be that. We think, you should want to be that. Like, you should have that belief in yourself. You are the greatest writer in the world. But with the limited market, with interference from publishing houses and, political stuff, it's harder and harder to necessarily get into that role through merit itself. And so what corner are you going to own? And I do feel that no matter where you are at, that you can own some corner of reading, writing, or speaking, even within 5 or 10 years. Because like I said, a lot of people are focused on this bigger goal. They're focused on the goal of Cormac. But what's interesting about Cormac, and let me blow your mind here, is that he tried to be, I got Child of God right here, he tried to be the postmodernist Southern Gothic revolutionary. When Cormac was wanting to become a writer, who were some of the biggest authors in the country and still alive? Flannery O'Connor and William Faulkner, who lived not too far from him, who wrote about, his childhood. And so I think McCarthy, after the Air Force, did live in San Francisco and was hanging out with the beat poets and all that. But I think he realized, like, this isn't my niche. And so McCarthy spent, over a decade of his life writing about the South and went really deep with it and really mastered it by the time you see what he did in Suttree. But that wasn't really what he was going to be known for. That really wasn't going to be what he was going to step into and become great at exactly. But the skills he developed in all of that, just the constant training and dedication, led to him writing Blood Meridian, which I would consider one of the greatest Western novels ever written. He really cemented himself in the top 5 with that in a very popular genre. I would say Suttree is probably in the Southern Gothic genre, in the top 5 too, but that's not it's 5% the size, if not less, of the Westerns. And so you one day, with enough practice in this corner, if you kind of adopt this mentality, if you want to be the best in something small, eventually you'll be able to pivot and go to something big. All the skills are going to be able to transfer. And so that's why I'm hopefully encouraging you to do, because one day I may pivot. One day, if I want to write about something else, maybe with a more broad topic, I will have been writing a daily poem this entire time. And if you are just going to abandon everything I just said, which is okay, and you're going to go for the big kahuna or something like that, go against something that's against yourself, then double down and fucking believe. Like, honestly, I know people who do this and it can work. It's going to create problems in your personal life if you do something that's unaligned, but you can do it and just hunker down and David Goggins it. Like, honestly, you can do it. You can force your way into anything. I don't recommend that. We call that writing unconsciously. But we do need a little bit of chaos. We do need some movers and shakers like that for progress. And I support you on that path if that's what you're trying to do, because I get to read some really sick shit later on.